have proven that they can put the work in to get a player back early. So I guess that's a positive, but it's a huge blow. It was a shocking tackle. I just think both Doucouré's tackles in that game, actually he made 3 because he should have got booked before he made the tackle on Kamara, which may have prevented that happening, actually, even though he did seem on a mission to be sent off. Any of them could I think any of those 2 tackles, on one on Kamara and one on Chambers, I think that either of them could have been straight red, in all honesty.
King can be vocal if he needs to be. I don't know what he's like in the dressing room, sort of pre and post game. If he needs to get stuck into a teammate, he will. If he needs to offer up encouragement, he can also do that. But I think he's more of a performance leader than a vocal player. And that Villa team was good enough, to be fair. A couple of games into the run, which at the time wouldn't have been a run because it was just 2 or 3 victories. He said, I remember looking around, I was sitting in the locker room and remember looking at the lockers thinking, we've got Tammy Abraham here, we've got John McGinn here, we've got Jack Grealish here, because John and Jack Grealish were obviously unbelievable at that point. We've just got enough quality here, we're going to win games.
The 1874 Show by the Villa View.
Hello and welcome to the 1874 Show on the Villa View. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined by the Athletics Global Gregg Evans to talk about all things Aston Villa from a unique perspective. Greg, another win. Here we go. This is what we do on the 1874 Show. 2 wins in a row, 2 clean sheets in a row, and everything is right with the world.
Hello, Dan. Well, it isn't what we do, is it? We talk about defeats on this show.
No, we're making a change. This is what we're doing now. This is how it's going to be under Unai Emery. We're going to be talking more about wins than we are about defeats.
Okay, I like it. Do you know what? I've actually had a very good 2 weeks because it just seems work is so much easier when Villa are winning. So it's been a nice 2 weeks, yeah, and looking forward to going over that latest win.
Yeah, it wasn't a great display. It wasn't a game that people will remember for a long time. But I felt like from the outset and in all the lead up in the week, listening to Unai Emery, listening to the players, it felt like they really wanted 1, a win at home, and 2, a clean sheet at home. So from that perspective, it ticked both those boxes. In some ways, I think Unai Emery will be happier with a ground out 1-0 that wasn't pretty than he would be with like a 3-4-0 where Villa were comfortable. I know that sounds ridiculous, but do you know what I mean? I feel like it just ticked a few boxes.
Yeah, it was really interesting leading up to the game that he just kept reiterating the importance of keeping a clean sheet. And he said, look, the way that we are going to win football games now is by keeping clean sheets. So that's a little bit of insight into, how he's preparing the teams and what he wants from his players. Yeah, it's weird because I'm watching Villa in a different way now. I'm not so much watching the game. I'm watching how they are trying to implement the style that Emery wants them to play. And because I'm watching it in that way, I'm seeing more positives than perhaps other people are seeing. Because on the face of it, Villa beat Crystal Palace 1-0 at home by an own goal. And they had played against a team with 10 men for 30 minutes. So it doesn't sound, like a great, exciting game and something you can really hang on to. But the way I watched that team play, I found some really encouraging parts from it.
Tell me what you found, Greg. Tell me what those things were.
Well, the key was how they controlled possession and the way that for 43 minutes, they didn't attempt one single long ball. Now, if you're a supporter in the whole end, you're not going to notice that immediately. I mean, I watched specifically to see how many times the defenders got on the ball and passed it either sideways, backwards, or closely forward. But there was nothing that... It was 43 minutes when Emi Martinez kicked it long for the first time. So that was the first sort of takeaway, and there were other little things that I noticed. That Villa played the most amount of passes in their own half compared to any single game this season, and also there were a couple of moments late in the second half. There was one where Emi Buendia was running forward and he had no options to go. He was quite close to the opposition box, but he had nothing in front of him. And he turned around and played the ball backwards. And Emery started applauding it because it was another show of just keeping possession and seeing out the game. There were a couple of moments I remember when Tyrone Mings looked to play backwards and the whole end really got on his back, almost as if to say, come on, get it forward, let's get that second goal and we'll kill off the game. Now, but he didn't. Again, he passed it sideways and, Emery was clapping on the sidelines. Now, I know a lot of that sounds pretty boring and pretty negative, but to go back to your initial point, Villa needed to stop the rot at home. They needed to get a win. They needed a clean sheet. They needed to build some confidence to know that when they are ahead again, they can comfortably see out the game. And it was probably about 75, 80 minutes where they clearly thought this is a stick or twist situation. Do we throw men forward and try and get that second goal and probably go on and win 2 or 3-0 then? But there's a tiny risk of conceding, or do we just see it out and settle for the 1-0? And we're on Monday now, and the 3 points are the 3 points, regardless of how Villa got it. So those were my main takeaways from the game, and I just think it's a building block for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to say now, but they did the right thing, because even though Palace had 10 men, and we've seen Villa struggle against 10 men many times since they've returned to the Premier League, Palace are still an agile outfit. They're still a mobile outfit. So if you go gung-ho and you don't get that second goal, you can still quite easily get caught on the break. Zaha can worm himself out of any situation. He curled one just wide at the back end of the second half. So, Palace, even with 10 men, are still a dangerous outfit because they've got some good players in transition. The biggest thing for me is that I think that's Villa's first home clean sheet since September. I think 1-0 against Southampton was the last time Villa kept a clean sheet at home, which is a long, long time ago. Obviously, a different manager. And I mentioned this in our post-match point show, that I remember coming away from that game, or I remember after the game, being sat around with my mates and just thinking, even though they've won, that was just miserable. There was just nothing to get behind. It was poor.
Southampton game.
Yeah, I can't see what Villa are doing. I don't know where we're going. There's no pattern to play. Manager's been there for nearly a year. I don't understand what we're trying to do. Now, this performance at the weekend, despite what you've just said, there was probably some similarities in it. Obviously, you were watching the game in a different way. But you come away from it, like you say, just thinking there's a building block. There's something there. There's a tangible style. The manager's trying to get his messages across. He's trying to implement something. So sometimes you might win a game 1-0 and it'd be ugly and it not be the most exciting game in the world. But it's part of the plan. It's part of the grander process. It's part of the longer process for the club. And I think that's the difference now. People sometimes pundits can be a bit lazy and say Steven Gerrard would have got panned for that 1-0 win. Well, yeah, he probably would have done, because there was nothing else to really get behind and you couldn't see what Villa were trying to do. We can see what they're trying to do under Unai Emery. We know it's the right manager, and that in the future could go down as an important win just because of the stuff you've said, because they now know they can win ugly at home. It's the mental side of the game sometimes. And Villa may be in that situation again where they're 1-0 up and they now know they can see a game out at home.
Yeah, and, it's like watching Man City at times, isn't it? They're not entirely entertaining. They pass it from side to side. They soak up the game. They kill the game at times. I was watching the Newcastle Man City game before Villa kicked off, and Newcastle had a long sustained spell of pressure, and it was sort of 5-6 minutes. Then Man City went up the other end and clinically scored their second goal. Now, obviously, that's what Villa are sort of working towards. They haven't got the level of player where they can ruthlessly put teams away right now, but they can work on a style that, if they do take the lead in a game, they're comfortable with what they've worked on in the week will help them see out that game. And I just thought that the performance against Palace showed that. I came away thinking Villa haven't actually played that well against Southampton away. They didn't play that well against Leeds. They didn't play that well against Everton. They didn't play that well against Crystal Palace. And there was one more game that they won. But they won. And that's the difference. Villa are now winning games when they're playing average, because they've got enough quality and they've got a correct game plan and they're tight enough defensively against the lower ranked teams to see them off. So I think they've taken a giant step forward. And I think in the summer, when Unai Emery identifies a couple more players, and look, it's not going to be as simple as we've said last week on the podcast. It's not going to be as simple as identifying a player, getting him in, and then he's immediately better than what Villa have got, because it doesn't always work that way. But the plan will be now to identify a couple of weaknesses in that team and bring a few more players in. And for me, Villa are then, knocking about the top 6 and 7, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're lacking firepower at the moment, Villa, but yet we sit here and they've scored in every game still.
They
that
scored in
Emery's
every
been
game
involved
under
in.
Emery. Yeah, so you know and they're spreading the goals around the team. I mean, I look at Saturday again. It could have been a day for John McGinn to finally score for first time in 40 odd games. He had two really good chances, and perhaps we'll get onto him shortly. But
Yeah.
you know, he's certainly thriving now, and he's looking much more comfortable in that advanced position. It's funny you've just reminded me of something actually. Southampton, the last time Villa got a clean sheet. Is that right with
I
Southampton?
believe so. I could be completely wrong. That's in my memory. The last time
Oh
they got a
dear,
clean
I've
sheet.
got a horrible comparison to throw up here. So the
Right.
last time Villa had a clean sheet was against Southampton, and Boubacar Kamara got injured. And now the last time they got injured, last time they had a clean sheet, their most recent clean sheet was against Crystal Palace, and Boubacar Kamara got injured, which isn't great.
I think that might be true. I can't remember Villa keeping another clean sheet at home. Just it's such a blow, isn't it? Because he's integral to what Villa do at the moment. We're recording at around 4:00, 4:15. We don't know the extent of the injury. Nothing's been announced at the time we're recording, but you know he's probably not going to be there for the next few weeks. At the very least, I thought it was a staggering 5-10 minutes from Decore, where he just seemed determined to get sent off and injure Villa players. It was really weird. But Kamara's one of them ones in the Villa midfield. I think Luiz can do a lot of the things that Kamara can do. But it's then, if he's out, who comes in to replace him and goes alongside Luiz? Then Donker was missing at the weekend. I thought Chambers came on and actually did okay in the midfield area, but I wouldn't want to see him starting in defensive midfield for Villa, to be honest, if I'm being perfectly honest. So it's a difficult one now because Kamara is such a good player. He's one of Villa's better players, isn't he? So essentially he's irreplaceable.
Yeah, he's outstanding. And I think he makes all the players alongside him perform much better. He's absolutely crucial to the way Emery wants to play. Emery knew of him before he came to Villa, but having spent the last 4 months with him, now realises what a brilliant player he is and what huge potential he has. If you look at the last couple of home goals, both through excellently worked passages of play that started with Emi Martinez and finished with goals, Kamara's at the heart of both of them.
He's involved, isn't he?
He's the key. He's the key because you look at when Martinez has the ball and his two options immediately are Konza and Mings, or the two centre-halves that are playing. But then Kamara's always moving around, 5 yards to the left, 5 yards to the right, coming in a little bit deeper, giving him that option. And then that just drags another opposition player out of the midfield. And then Villa can play in a cute, nice little triangle and get out of there. They break the lines really quickly. And they go on to score, as we've seen in the last two home games. It's not as easy as that. It's not going to happen every single time. But the fact that it's happened in the last two home games shows that there's clear progress being made. And Kamara, I just think, if you're, people all remember him for the mistake against
Leicester,
yes, and they'll remember him. And if you're looking a little bit deeper, they'll remember him for the mistake against Arsenal, which was just a long hoofed ball, which allowed Arsenal to turn over play and then go and score from Jorginho really late on. But on that day, he had a 93% passing accuracy, and he only misplaced 2 of his 50 or 60 passes, which is pretty incredible in the Premier League, especially against Arsenal. So
yeah,
he's key to the way Villa play. He can wriggle out of tight situations. He can pick a pass where he breaks the lines. Villa did their research on him before they signed him. His statistics at Marseille before he was signed was that he ranked among the highest in midfielders for interceptions, for winning back possession in the middle third, and for things like through balls and passes into the final third. So he can do a little bit of both. He can help control the game, but he's also got the quality to break the lines and pick out clever passes. So yeah, he's going to be a big loss. And I also think he's making the players alongside him better. I think Douglas Luiz looks a better player with him next to him. I think John McGinn is performing really well, because one of the reasons why he's performing well is because he's in a more advanced role, and he's got that protection behind him. So yeah, it's going to be a big miss for Villa.
What are they going to do? Do you think McGinn pulls back? Because you don't want to pull McGinn back at the moment.
The option, look, we can go through the options together. The obvious one is Leander Dendoncker. If as soon as he's back from his injury, he will be the obvious guy to come straight back in. I like Dendoncker. I think he's got qualities. He's not Boubacar Kamara, but he can fit in. Callum Chambers, who came off the bench on Saturday, he's the other option. I know that Emery really trusts McGinn, and I just fear a little bit that he's going to put him back in there, which isn't the end of the world, but you just want someone to just drop in instead of Kamara and leave McGinn where he is and let him continue doing what he's doing best, because he's doing really well. And look at the last 3 goals. I think that he's been key in all 3 of them, hasn't he? So Villa need McGinn in that more advanced role, but unfortunately it's going to be needs must. So for me, it'll be one of the 3. I just don't see Ramsey being that deeper line midfielder. I just don't see him having the responsibility of collecting the ball and building up the play. I think he's better further forward.
That pass actually that you made at the weekend for the goal, McGinn, might be the thing that tips the balance and pulls him back, because it was such a good pass, wasn't it? But I guess he's doing it from that advanced area anyway. So,
but he's doing it after Kamara's passed to him.
Yeah,
Kamara is the playmaker. Kamara gets the ball, he starts it off, and then it's up to one of the others to finish off the move. Kamara's the playmaker. He's the key in all of this.
I do think Luiz can do some of the things that Kamara does. So if Dendoncker, for example, comes in, or McGinn or whoever, I do think Luiz can take on the mantle, because he perhaps takes more of a back seat on the ball out of the two midfielders. Let's be real here. With Villa's midfield, especially when it's been a midfield 3, we've spoke about the makeup of that for probably 3 seasons and not liked it and said this isn't what we like here. I don't understand what we're doing. Them two as a pair,
they're a good pair, aren't they?
As good as it gets at the moment for where Villa are, I would say. Villa aren't going to get too better. If Villa went to sign a central midfielder, they're not getting someone in who's better than Kamara and Luiz, I don't think.
No. I mean, look, Bentancur was a player that Villa had watched previously, and I thought he was excellent at Tottenham until he got his injury. Tottenham clearly miss him. They clearly miss him. He's irreplaceable in the way that Kamara's irreplaceable for Villa. But Kamara and Luiz, I like it a lot. I think it's a good midfield. We spoke for years, haven't we, about that midfield. Villa hadn't signed a defensive midfielder for like 5-6 transfer windows. I think Marvelous Nakamba was the last last permanent defensive midfielder that Villa had signed before Kamara. So that number 6 position was a key area. They needed it. I mean, look, at the time of recording, we don't know the extent of the injury. I think at minimum it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks. We were told on Saturday by staff at Villa that it wasn't an ankle or Achilles injury. That was the biggest fear, because either of those injuries would rule you out for a very long time, potentially even season ending. Kamara had an assessment at midday on Monday, so we're waiting for the outcome of it.
I guess the good thing is he had a bad injury earlier on in the season, like we discussed, but he got back a lot quicker than he was supposed to. So he's obviously got that durability and he's got that recovery, and he's proven that he can put the work in to get back earlier. And Villa's medical staff have proven that they can put the work in to get a player back early. So I guess that's a positive, but it's a huge blow. It was a shocking tackle. I actually think both Doucouré's tackles in that game. Well, actually, he made 3, because he should have got booked before he made the tackle on Kamara, which may have prevented that happening, actually, even though he did seem on a mission to be sent off. Any of them could. I think any of those 2 tackles, one on Kamara, one on Chambers, I think that either of them could have been straight red, in all honesty.
Yeah, that they weren't great tackles. I was surprised by Doucouré. I mean, I quite rate him as a player. I think he's done all right this season, but I was surprised at how just the recklessness of it. I mean, you make the first challenge against Kamara, you get a booking. Surely you're going to learn from that.
It's so soon after as well.
You get a booking like straight after. I mean, it must be infuriating. Patrick Vieira was asked about it after, and he kind of just played it down. He didn't really say anything, but deep down, he must have been furious with him. He was a midfielder.
I think Vieira might have done that kind of thing before. He might have done that kind of thing before himself.
Yeah, probably, but he knows what it's like in that area. You do have to control yourself, especially after one booking, and in the modern game as well, bookings are so easily picked up. But yeah, it wasn't great play from him. In terms of Kamara's recovery, he did get back from the last injury a lot quicker than expected. Villa sanctioned a move for him to go and spend some time in Dubai, where he works in the FIFA facilities there, to try and speed up his rehab. And he did get back really quick, and the France national team selectors were impressed too. And he just missed out on the World Cup, which was a shame, because he got injured on the same day or the same week that he was announced into the France squad, the last one before the. So it was a disappointing time for him. But yeah, he's got equipment in his home in Birmingham that helps speed up recovery as well. So yeah, he's well set up. But we'll just have to wait and see the extent of his injury first.
Yeah, fingers crossed he gets back ASAP, because irreplaceable in that Villa midfield. So it's been such a good signing for the football club, and someone who's going to be a big part of Villa's future and what Emery wants moving forward. Let's talk about John McGinn a little bit then. So, for a year maybe, he was in no man's land a bit at Villa, wasn't he? He was been asked to perform a role under Steven Gerrard that just didn't suit him at all. His form suffered, his confidence suffered. We were basically asking John McGinn to do the things that he wasn't great at, whilst not asking him to do the things that he was good at. So it been a bizarre 12 months for him since Steven Gerrard came in. He then got made captain at a time when his form was suffering in general, and then some of the reasons that were levelled at Tyrone Mings getting the captaincy taken away from him could have been labelled at John McGinn. So then came fan criticism, and you know what, he got heavy criticism. I think it's all well and good questioning form and things like that, which Villa fans did. But a lot of the stuff Villa fans really started to get on John McGinn's back, which I think was out of order for someone who's done so much for the football club. Does feel now that he's feeling the love again from the crowd. He's got the love from a manager, which you've alluded to earlier on in our conversation. He's playing a role that suits him. It does feel like we're starting to see the best of John McGinn again, and that's excellent for Villa.
Yeah, really pleased for him that he's finding this good form again. I think he'll probably know himself that his form under Steven Gerrard wasn't at the level that it was previously. He probably knew that. Yeah, he did, didn't he? Said it publicly a few times that he knew he needed to do better. But Steven Gerrard really rated him. Loved his energy, loved his enthusiasm. Thought he was an excellent player, named him the captain. It's just he's never really played in that defensive role, and he's always played his better football when he's in more of an attacking role. So it was good to see that Emery recognised that and put him back in there. I think the criticism that he got last year was really harsh for a player who was signed for 2.75 million. It's easy to forget that he's probably one of the best bargains Villa have had for a very long time. Certainly in the top 3 or 4. All his efforts in the promotion winning year, he had a decent start to life in the Premier League, and he's somebody who he's so down to earth. He's so different to most footballers. He'll stick around and speak to supporters after the games and spend hours signing autographs. Yeah. He's always one that waits around. One of the players that gives the people that turn up to the training ground the right time, and he's just a good ambassador for the club and just a down to earth guy who has done excellent for himself. So, but yeah, I mean, look, playing in the Premier League, it's ruthless, isn't it? Supporters expect you to be turning up every single week, performing at the levels that they've seen you previously. So when you drop off, inevitably there's always going to be criticism, but it's nice to see that the Villa fans are now back on his side, because I feel like he's a guy that deserves it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, when he was named captain, I didn't agree with it. It wasn't something that I thought should happen. I just felt Tyrone Mings was a better fit for captain. He was a better captain, a better leader. At that time, McGinn's confidence felt low at the start of the season, so to burden him with the captaincy at that time just felt strange to me. Not to say that he's not a good leader, John McGinn, but now, I don't know how much you know about this, I kind of feel he's growing into the captaincy now and under Emery. I kind of feel like he is the right leader now, and it's the right time for him. I feel like you watch him on the pitch, he's very, very vocal now, a lot more vocal than I ever remember him being. He's geeing up those around him quite a lot, and he's taken a lot of responsibility on his shoulders. But actually, whereas earlier on in the season when he's given the responsibility, I think it weighed him down. I think now he's carrying it on his back and he's taking it into games, and I think he's actually now starting to just enjoy being a captain. I was at an event at Villa Park in October or November, and he was there. And I'm not a massive body language reader or anything like that. I'm not trained in that kind of thing. But I could tell he was low. I spoke to him a little bit. I could tell he was low. I could tell he wasn't himself, and that he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Now he just seems to have that freedom again to be John McGinn in that new position, and I love seeing it.
Yeah, and I think you speak to most footballers when they play with that freedom and they're playing well and they're comfortable in their role and comfortable in their own performances. It helps. It rubs off on others. others can see that they're performing well. And look, McGinn can be vocal if he needs to be. I don't know what he's like in the dressing room, sort of pre and post game. I'm not privy to obviously those conversations, but if he needs to get stuck into a teammate, he will. If he needs to offer up encouragement, he can also do that. But I think he's more of a performance leader than a vocal player. But clearly he's performing well. And look, you just have to, when you're the captain of the team, you just have to be playing well. It's as simple as that. You can't have a captain, regardless of how great they are as a person or how much their teammates respect them. If they're not performing well, you can't be the captain, because it's just, you have to influence and rub off on others. And that's typically why we see some of the best performers in the team being the captain of their respective clubs.
Yeah, Harry Kane, an example of that. Jack, when he was at Villa as well,
Yeah.
Another example. I'm really pleased for him. I think he did. I thought some of the stick was completely unjustified. As much as I didn't think he was playing well, I thought some of the stick was really over the top. And we'll come on to your piece that you did for the Athletic last week. You only have to listen to the way other players talk about him, or read the way other players talk about him, to tell you a lot about his character and how he is in the dressing room and how well thought of he is as well. We'll come on to that, as I said. But you forget how much people do for the football club at times, and McGinn's right up there for players that have done a lot for Aston Villa. Now, as an honorary member of the Cash family as well, Greg, you must be pleased to see Matty Cash bombing up and down the touchline again. It was, listen, I don't know whether you've seen his interview afterwards or whether you spoke to him.
We did it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So the way he was speaking about Emery as well, for someone who's been out of the team, I thought that was very encouraging as well.
Yes, it was good to catch up with him actually after the game and speak a little bit and try and find out his thoughts on what it was like when he was out with the team, and also how much he's enjoying or not enjoying time under Emery, because let's be honest, Steven Gerrard was his biggest fan. If there was a he was one of the first names on the team sheet. And I know it's a bit of an overused phrase now, but
no, he was, because he played every week.
And he was a real favourite of Gerrard's. So I asked him straight. Look, I said, look, how was it when you were out of the team? How did it feel? And his reaction was kind of like, well, it's never nice not playing. Of course, it was a little bit disappointing, but to hear so many people saying that I'd been dropped because I'd been playing badly was a little bit confusing and a little bit weird. He said, he'd been to the World Cup. He felt like he'd performed quite well at the World Cup, but he'd come back and Ashley Young was playing well. Ashley Young kept his place. Villa were winning. And so he just had to be a little bit patient. That was his take on things. He's had to work really hard, like all the rest of the players, under Emery to get used to his methods, to find out, for example, for Matt Cash, he needs to know when he can get forward and when he has to stay back. He's drilled very closely and intensely on that. He gets clips where he has to study them at home and see what's working well, what's working not, where he has to be positioned in certain scenarios. So he was pleased to get that assist, because that's the best part of his game, he feels. He loves attacking. He loves being a modern fullback and getting forward and creating chances. So to get that assist was, probably, well, it was a good thing for him, because he can say, look, I can do this. I can get forward. I can create goals. And Emery will have to take notice of that.
I think it's sometimes a good thing when a player has teething problems under a manager, because it will show a lot about their character. So he could have easily sulked when he was out of the team and not tried to adapt to what the manager wants. And I've said previously on The View and other things that I've visibly noticed Emery losing his nut on the touchline at Matty Cash at times if he's done something that he doesn't like. But, you feel like that relationship and the way Cash was starting to speak to him after the game, now he's starting to blossom, and says a lot about Matty Cash, that he's prepared to adapt, and he's prepared to learn and study and get to the level that Emery wants to get himself back in the team. And you've talked a little bit about rotation, and there will be rotation of fullbacks, but it now feels again like it's his shirt.
Yeah, and I mean, look, again, I asked him that direct question as well, and he was quick to play that down. He said, look, it's never my shirt. We've got 4 good fullbacks here. I'm competing with Ashley Young, who he's quite close with, so socially as well. They do things together, I think. And they push each other quite hard. So he knows if he keeps playing well, he's not going to be dropped. He's not going to lose his place if he performs at the level that he's performed in the last 2 home games. He's been brilliant. I think he's been one of Villa's top performers against Arsenal and Crystal Palace. Had a little bit of a rough ride at Everton in the first half, but then certainly improved defensively. But the key is the key for Emery with his fullbacks is to make sure they're doing exactly what he's asked of them. Of course, they have to defend first and foremost, but whether on the right occasion they can be a real handful going forward and help create. And I think the last thing Cash said to us, there was me and a couple of other reporters down at the mix zone at Villa Park, was I'm going to try and get forward, as often as I can when I'm allowed to, and try and give Ollie Watkins as many tap-ins as possible. So that's what he's hoping to be doing in the future.
Yeah, I mean, he was my man of the match on Saturday, which people are saying means absolutely nothing. But let me tell you, he liked the tweet pretty quickly. So obviously, my man of the match award does mean a lot to Matty Cash. So let's see who gets it.
I always find if Villa give us a player to interview after the game, he's typically either scored or been the man of the match. So yeah. That makes sense. I'm not sure who I would have given man of the match. I didn't think it was Cash actually.
Cash and McGinn were my top two.
I thought McGinn and Kamara, Kamara and Louise all impressed me, I thought. So I would maybe give it to one of those.
Okay, interesting. Let's move on then away from the Crystal Palace game, Greg, and we've teased it a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your big piece that you did on The Athletic last week, your big read around Villa's 10-game unbeaten run that started around this time last year, was it?
It was on the 4-year anniversary that I released the story, So 2nd of March, story I've been really wanting to do for a long time. We've teased it a little bit on here. The reason I was teasing it rather than saying exactly what it was because I was still waiting for one more interview. So I wanted to get that in the bag before I could do it. And it was quite a crucial one. I won't say who kept me waiting the longest, but it was quite a crucial one.
I think I could guess who it was.
No, I don't think it was.
Okay.
I can't give you any clues. I should get it. So it was a long time to put together, and obviously, I'm very conscious that people who subscribe to The Athletic are paying their money to read my articles and other articles. So it's really important that I give them something different. Feel like this was something unique, something that I wanted to tell for a long time. And what was most pleasing about it was just that all the players were so willing to do it. It took me a long time to get hold of them. Don't get me wrong. And footballers aren't the easiest to pin down, and you have to be patient with them. But once I got talking to each and every one of them, they loved doing it, and they loved going through the memories. And it was a brilliant time to be covering the club. I presume for you, it was a brilliant time to be supporting the club. And the players, they say it was a brilliant time to be playing for the club. Tammy Abraham, who's over in Roma now, playing European football. He's played for Chelsea, but he says, looking back, one of the best times of my career now was playing for Villa. It was one of the most enjoyable. So that just kind of summed it up. Yeah,
I mean, I loved reading it. I had a smile on my face all the way through reading it. I thought it's probably the best thing you've done on The Athletic. I'm not saying everything else you've done is rubbish, but I do think that was your strongest piece. I think that's the bit that you're good at, telling stories of things that have happened previously. And I thought you put it together really, really well. It was just a happy time. I think, looking back, it's actually a really special team. Especially when you hear the way they're talking about each other. Even the way they talk about someone like Glenn Whelan, but yedding at people that you don't hear a lot about, the way the players all wax lyrical about them setting the standards in training. I just thought it was really, really interesting, And that side will go down as a special side because there's a lot of younger Villa fans who've seen very little success as Villa fans, but they'll remember that running the Championship and going up as a successful team. They had the loot kit. It was just everything going around with it was just so good. And I was out with Connor a few weeks ago, and I was sat there thinking, I know he's fell away, he's playing in League One or whatever now, but everyone who played in that team was special and contributed something. I think it's rare that you have a squad of players where everyone pretty much has contributed something. You said to me that loved speaking to Neil Taylor. He had so many stories, and he's a player that probably in 10, 20 years' time, Villa fans won't really remember much of, but would have been a driving force in the dressing room and made it a good place.
They all had a unique place in the team. They all had a special part to play. When I spoke to Dean Smith, he was saying that Dean was saying, look, the key people in the dressing room were Neil Taylor, Mile Jedinak, Glenn Whelan, and Elmer Hamida. Those were the four that set standards. Yet, if you think back to that team as a supporter, the four names that you think of are probably going to be John McGinn, Jack Grealish, Tammy Abraham, and perhaps Jed Steer for what he did towards the end, and Tyrone Mings. But you don't really think of the Whelans and the Elmos and the Neil Taylors, but those were the guys that were driving standards in training, and those were the guys that were making sure that the younger players weren't complacent when they were winning games. And you need those players on a team to help you over the line. Now, I went through all the 10 games. For those listeners who haven't read it, I do. It's very rare you'll hear me say this, but I encourage you to go and read it, because I'm basing that comment on the feedback that I've had, and I've never had as much positive feedback from a story as that one. So many people messaged me and commented on the story and said, "Look, you've goosebumps along, the whole way. You've brought back so many brilliant memories." So if you haven't read it, go and have a read of it. But just to explain what I did, I went through all the 10 games and got all the memories from each of the games, and it was little things like Tammy was the main guy back then, but when he got injured at Millwall, Villa needed Jonathan Codger for a little bit. And the way I think of Codger now, when I say his name, is how he almost tossed it off towards the end, and how he appeared to be very laser.
Drove me mad, Codger.
And didn't seem to care about Villa. Now, that's my opinion. It might have been different for him towards the end, but definitely at that point, he was energised and he was motivated, and he was a key part of that Villa team. It was just so interesting to hear some of the things that Jack Grealish was saying about him, some of the things that Dean Smith and Neil Taylor were saying about him. He was a really important player back then. But look, I mean, honestly, I could chat all day about that story. I enjoyed it so much. It was, I spoke to Anwar El Ghazi over in Holland. I went and seen Andre Green in Slovakia, where he's playing now. It was just great to get a full lowdown from all the players and be able to pull it all together. And I remember covering the team and I was enjoying it. You enjoyed it as a supporter, but the players loved it as well.
Yeah,
they genuinely loved it. They were singing their own song, singing songs that the supporters were singing after games and things like that. It was just a great time to be associated with Villa.
Yeah, it was the making of a few players as well. What wasn't it that as well? And interviewed Neil Cutler last week and spoke a little bit about Jed Steer. Someone who hasn't played a fat lot of games for Villa, but will always be remembered fondly because he helped get the team up. Jedinak would have seen it all because he came in under Di Matteo, didn't he? So he was there under Di Matteo, Bruce, and Dean Smith. But just the professional standards, he wouldn't have changed from how he was under Di Matteo to how he was under Dean Smith. It's just, it's a fascinating time in Villa's history as well, because I hated the Championship. I absolutely hated Villa being in the Championship. It wasn't something I ever expected to see in my life. And a lot of the time, it felt like an absolute slog trying to get out of that league. And you go and watch some games.
Wasn't it?
It was, Villa,
for 3.5 years,
Villa weren't great,
dreadful, wasn't it?
Yeah, Villa weren't great for a lot of their time in the Championship.
Yeah.
That 10-game run was like, I remember doing podcasts every week with Tom Julian, and people were messaging in saying, if we could just win 10 games in a row, we've still got a chance of promotion. And me and Tom were sat there being like, what these people are? That's not going to happen. We're going to be in the Championship again next season. It's mad.
I'd tell this. I'm sure I've already told this story, but it was before the Derby game and after the Stoke game. And I was walking into Bodymoor Heath, and there was just 3 people that used to cover Villa at the time. Then at press conferences, it was me, Matt Mayer from the Express and Star, and Tom Ross from the Tom Ross would occasionally come for a radio briefing, and Radio WM would come. So there was always 3, sometimes 4 of us. And I just remember it was cold February. We were walking into Bodymoor Heath, and I just said to him, literally, Villa have got to win almost every game now. They would have to go on something ridiculous like an 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 game unbeaten run to have any chance of making in the playoffs. So we might as well forget it now. Where do you think we'll be going in pre-season in the summer? It just like, and the way they turned it around was, incredible. So it just shows, doesn't it, in football that anything can happen. And that Villa team was good enough, to be fair. A couple of the players said, look, it was Jed, I think it was Jed actually. Jed said to me, he said, a couple of games into the run, which at the time wouldn't have been a run because it was just, 2 or 3 victories. He said, I remember looking around, I was sitting in the locker room and remember looking at the lockers thinking, we've got Tammy Abraham here, we've got John McGinn here, we've got Jack Grealish here. Because John and Jack Grealish were obviously unbelievable at that point. We've just got enough quality here, we're going to win games. And then Connor, he said, it was the only time ever in my career so far that I felt like I was going into games and we were not going to lose. And for footballers to have that, it's so unique, so rare.
Well, it's very rare. I've had a run where I turned up to Villa Park and knowing that they're going to win. I've had more weeks where I've turned up thinking, I know we're not going to win today. Yeah. For that 10-game run, you literally just felt like they'd win every week. That Rotherham game for some reason, because I think it's because the winner, and they had 10 men. The goal was so good, one of my favourite goals ever. Games like that will just stay in my mind forever.
Yeah,
it was just
Rotherham and Sheffield Wednesday were the big ones, weren't they? They were the real memorable ones.
Yeah, big wins, like big character, big ball shown from the team as well. It was just a great time. And it came off the back of an absolute slog. I remember Villa losing to Barnsley at home. They just signed all these players as well, going to Brentford. Just signed like 3 players for like the best of the Championship at the time, and then Brentford just picked us apart 3-0. Their little ground. I was standing in the terraces thinking, "What am I doing? What has happened to Villa here? What is going on?" But yeah, a fantastic time. Yeah, your article. It's a good article when you spend time afterwards reading the comments, which is what I did. So I probably spent 15, 20 minutes reading the article. I probably did the same again, reading all the comments. I think I went back to look at the comments again a few nights later to read the ones that I'd missed out on. So yeah, just a really happy time, and well done to you, because it was a brilliant article and I really, really enjoyed it. I did.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
No, well done. I'll give you a jip when you deserve it. I'll give you praise when you deserve it as well, Greg. But I did ask for some questions on Twitter earlier, so I just got them.
Oh, okay. You could have briefed me with these before we get
Greg, into I believe I tagged you in it, so you should have been saying all.
Really? I don't always check notifications. I'm sorry. So
so I'll just do.
I missed them.
Just do a few of them. This feels a little bit to do with what we were just talking about. So Harry 1092. Is there still a chance of a push for European football? You never know, Greg. If Villa win 10 games in a row.
Push sorry, say that again. I've just just checking my phone, so I might have some news to break shortly. Just say that again, sorry.
No, let's break the news.
No, I don't know it yet. I was checking to see if it was the news.
Okay. Right, so Harry 1092 says, is there any real chance of a push for European football still? So Greg, if we say it now, Villa could just win 10 games in a row. European football.
Well, Harry, if you've been listening previously, then yeah, we're in the spirits here of winning lots of games in a row. So I mean, look, you can't rule it out yet. I'm intrigued to watch Brentford Fulham tonight to see how those two get on. Those two at the moment are slightly ahead of Villa, not just in terms of points, but in terms of I think togetherness and the way that they've attacked this season.
It's ridiculous, by the way. Like that, they're not getting enough credit for how well they've done.
Yeah, they've been excellent. They've been fantastic. And Marco Silva deserves huge credit. But yeah, you wouldn't really associate Fulham, Brentford, and Brighton with clubs that would be performing better than Villa, but they are at the moment. So, look, I think if Villa keep winning, it sounds easy, doesn't it? Villa keep winning, get into Europe. I think that 7th place is still very much available. There's 13 games left.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
If Villa wins 7 or 8, I think that. Oh, I think Villa win 8 or 9, they've got a chance.
Stop it. In 4 years' time, Gregg Evans on the Athletic writing about the start of this 10-game run. It's going to be some article.
I think the key is because of the slow start to the season. The key is to finish in the top 10. That has been Villa's aim for a long time now. They haven't done it for 12 years. If they can finish in the top 10 this season, that's a building block for them. 7th place is very much still there, but they've got to go on an unbelievable run to get there.
I feel like I'd be a lot more buoyed about that without this Kamara injury. The Kamara injury is critical, really. How long he's going to be out for, he's going to make or break that, I think, because we've said he's irreplaceable. I do think that'll be a huge blow to Villa's ambitions this season. Gary H, GH Villa says, I heard Unai's explanation as to why 2 goalkeepers and no kids on the bench, even though we are 1 short than the max allowed. Not sure I understand the rationale, so would like your views on this.
I mean, look, the way I'm reading it is Unai Emery's been asked this question a few times now, and the way he's never really fully answered it. I think what we can probably look at is his take is we need to we want to warm up both the goalkeepers. We want to keep both of them active, but you can include another goalkeeper in there anyway. It went out on the warm up. You often see,
Villa have done that for years.
In there, and we've seen that happen for years. So I think it's a little bit of a look. I'm going to need players in the summer. I've had 2 goalkeepers on the bench for the last 5 weeks or whatever. I think there's a little bit of that there, and it's also a case of the youngsters that are currently there at the moment that could be promoted into the first team squad. They're just not ready. They're just not going to be players who are going to feature for Villa in the first team. So there's no point in Emery putting them on the bench because they're not going to feature. Villa's best youth players are out on loan at the moment. Aaron Ramsey scored in the Championship. Jaden Philogene-Bidet scored in the Championship. Keenan Davis, he's at Watford and he's going to leave.
Archer scoring.
Cameron Archer. These are the players that would be in the squad if they're there now, but they're out on loan. So, I'm not automatically writing off every single under-21 player there at the club, but at the moment, they're not on the level to be in the squad.
I've got a slightly different take on it to you, only ever so slightly. So I think the 2 keepers thing looks fine. I think you've got 9 subs nowadays. You can only use 5. If Villa only name 8 subs, if they've got 2 keepers on, I don't think it's a massive issue. Caden Young's a little bit strange because he has been on the bench when Emery first came in and he's fell away now. But I almost think it's an incentive thing, so that if a young player makes it to the bench, they know they've burnt it, and they'll feel good about that. They now know that being on the bench actually means something, if that makes sense, because Villa haven't had that. So I think later on in the season, you will see academy players coming to the bench, but they'll know that they've done enough to be there. So I think it's quite clever. Actually, in some ways, I guess I can't find now. Someone's asked, it's Sean at the Villa's asked about Kane Kessler-Hayden because he's back at the club. He's more of a senior youth player, but he's not getting anywhere near it.
No, I mean, because Villa have got a right back on the bench already, so Unai Emery feels like he doesn't need one. A little bit unfortunate for Kessler-Hayden because he'd started 5 games in a row, I think, at Huddersfield before he was sent back. It was a decision from Huddersfield. It was an up and down period for him, but something he would have clearly learnt from. He had a lot of momentum behind him, Kessler-Hayden, because he went on loan to Swindon, did really well. He went somewhere else, didn't he? MK Dons, was it? Yeah. He went to MK Dons, did really well there. And it was only right for Villa to find a Championship club for him the next time in the next season to try and get him to try and keep his momentum building. And look, Huddersfield were a struggling club. They swapped managers during the season. They wanted to promote some of their own youth players as well, so it didn't quite work out for Kessler-Hayden there. And he's back at Villa now, and he will be hoping to kick on next season. Another loan spell will be the aim for him next year.
Okay, and we're going to finish with the absolute major question, the big question, the one everyone wants to know the answer to from AVFC Faith. I think it'd be nice to finish the podcast with a non-Villa question every week, so I'd encourage people to tweet ahead of 1874. Favourite chocolate bar, Greg?
Oh my God, I didn't see that one coming. Well, it's a Whisper Gold, isn't it?
I mean, you say that like that's a popular choice. I wouldn't think a Whisper Gold is a popular choice for people with chocolate bars.
Got to be in the Evans household to know.
Have I even had I'm struggling to think if I've even ever had a Whisper Gold. What's in it? I've had a Whisper.
Well, it's a Whisper with caramel in it.
Oh no, not big on the caramel stuff, mate.
It's fantastic.
That's not one for me.
What a strange question to finish the podcast with.
I like it. I'm all for it.
Yeah, but yeah, we have what do we get at the press box at Villa? We have dairy milks, and we have a dairy milk caramel option at Aston Villa.
But you take the caramel.
I'll
Obviously.
take the caramel.
Take the caramel. The only person that eats the caramel. Everyone else would take the normal dairy milk. I think I've got a favourite chocolate bar. Really, I don't mind a Yorkie. I like a Yorkie.
Yorkies are good.
But I'm a Ferrero Rocher man.
Excuse me.
I'm gonna have chocolate. I'm gonna do it properly
and
eat a tray of Ferrero Rocher in one go.
I always buy my mum some of them for Christmas. She loves them too.
My mum gets it for me.
Eating most of them.
Yeah, I love Ferrero Rocher at Christmas. Have that for breakfast every Christmas day without fail. Thanks for that question, Faithful. I enjoyed talking about something different at the end. Thanks to Greg for joining me as well on the 1874 show. And thanks to Adam for producing and all the work he's going to go on to do to get this podcast on all the various platforms. I'll give a shout out to Spotify again. We've got video and audio on Spotify now. So if that's the way you prefer to take in your podcasts, then you can do it using the Spotify app. I've never had Spotify, so I don't really know what it's like. But yeah, if you use it, you can watch this podcast via that medium. We'll be back next week with another episode of 1874 every Monday, so watch out for that.